Pluto has officially entered the sign of Aquarius and is going to remain in the sign of Aquarius for the next 20 years. So what does this mean for you? In this video, I'm going to break it down. We're going to talk about each of the zodiac signs and what they can expect from this Pluto transit within the sign of Aquarius. We're also going to talk about the general energy of Pluto in Aquarius and what we can expect and what we are aiming for on an evolutionary level, both as an individual and as a collective, being that Pluto is a collective planet. For those of you who've already heard a lot about Pluto and Aquarius and these energies and just want to get right to the nitty-gritty of how this is going to affect you personally, I know my fixed signs are probably very curious about this, as there has been a lot of hype about the fixed signs, being that Pluto is moving into the fixed sign of Aquarius. I'll link for you in the description box and the comments below the timestamp so you can jump right to that portion of the video. But I thought it was really important to talk about the general energies that we're going to be experiencing as Pluto, the planet that represents our collective evolutionary aims, as well as in our natal chart, our personal evolutionary aims, both within the collective or generation that we incarnated with and within our own individual realm. This can be found most specifically by the house that Pluto is placed in, as the sign is more of a generational aspect. Although the generation that we chose to incarnate within certainly speaks to the energy of our soul, as Pluto is a planet that represents, as well as our soul's evolutionary impulses and our past lives, that energy of power and how we harness our individual power and our collective power. So this is a big, big energy. There's lots to unpack here. So get yourself ready as we dive deep. Pluto in Capricorn, we have been talking about for quite some time. There's been a lot said about Pluto as it's been in this final anaretic 29th degree of Capricorn. Pluto moved out of that degree and into Aquarius on November 19th. And Pluto, as we said, will remain in Aquarius until 2044. Although in 2023, Pluto will be dipping in and out of the beginnings of Pisces as it begins the dance that we've been seeing Pluto do over these last few years since 2023 of going back and forth with retrogrades between the beginnings of Aquarius and the final degrees of Capricorn. Pluto entered the sign of Capricorn back in 2008. And as Pluto entered the sign of Capricorn, we began this process of evolution along these Capricornian themes and lines. So we saw a lot of power really being consolidated to an even greater sense than we had seen before in the hands of authority and the hands of these systems and institutions represented by Saturnian energy, Capricornian energy, Capricorn being ruled by the planet of Saturn. And Pluto shows us, it allows us to evolve that energy. It also shows us the shadow side of that energy. And we have seen what happens when we give these institutions and these authorities complete dominion over our lives. When we say, I don't want to deal with this, you figure it out. You know what's best for me. You continue to grow, continue to consolidate your power. That's fine. Just take care of me, right? It's this energy of initially giving up our own authority to a greater authority. But Pluto is not about that. Pluto is about individual sovereignty as well as collective sovereignty. Collective meaning not just a few, but everybody. And so in our individual lives, we had these different power struggles as well. We had these areas where we really had to look at where it was that we were taking responsibility for our energy, for our power, and where it was that we were giving that away, where it was that we were shrinking back when we needed to be stepping forward and solidly planting our feet. This was an energy that really grew us up. It really matured us. Saturn is the planet of maturity. It's the planet of responsibility. It's the planet that teaches us the hard lessons so that we can then thrive. Saturn says, if you put in the work, you will receive the benefits, but you've got to put in the work. You've got to apply yourself. You've got to show up consistently. Consistency is a huge theme of Saturn, as well as perseverance. And these are also qualities that are very much appreciated and valued by Pluto. So there was a synergy of energy here between Pluto and Capricorn Saturn energy. And we actually saw Pluto and Saturn come together during this time in that great conjunction in 2020, in January of 2020. And so that was when the rubber really met the road. That was when Saturn and Pluto got together and they said, okay, how much have you really learned about your own power? How much responsibility have you learned? How mature have you gotten? How much have you grown? We're going to test you. We're going to consolidate these energies of authoritarianism and control. And we're going to see how long you allow that before you recognize that your own individual sovereignty is being compromised. And are you willing to stand up for that? Are you willing to take responsibility for your own reality? Are you willing to own your power? Now that you're seeing what can happen when you don't, when you give that away to somebody who supposedly knows best, right? Saturn is the energy that matures us. So it's when we, yes, originally it is like the parent that teaches us, that grows us. But ultimately what that parent wants is for the child to be able to strike it out on their own. That's why parents teach children lessons. That's why they create boundaries. That's why parents challenge their children in appropriate ways. It's so that they can one day stand on their own 2 feet. That is always the ultimate goal. So when Saturn and Pluto met here, it was a real turning point in that energy of like, are you ready to stand on your own 2 feet? Are you ready to own your voice, to own your power? This was an energy that really helped us to examine ambition, understanding the dark side of ambition, as well as the higher octave of that energy, understanding our true intentions and motivations when it comes to what we are striving for, what it is that we are trying to achieve. And I don't like the word try, that we are achieving. So that's really the energy, right? It took us from I'm going to try to I am, I will. That is this energy that we have been cultivating and working throughout Pluto and Capricorn. Pluto and Capricorn allowed these authoritarian systems to consolidate and to gain an unimaginable amount of power in order to show us what the results of that would be, and in order to force us to consolidate within ourselves and step into our ultimate power. And then, once we had had that experience, Pluto began to assist us in breaking these systems down, to begin that process of the destruction of that which was not working. We saw throughout Pluto and Capricorn, especially toward the end here, we saw the rise to power in a manner, at least in this country, the United States where I live, and I think throughout the world as well, of these forces, these entities, these energies, the dominion, the almost complete fruition of these plans of complete oppression and essentially ownership of the people of this planet. We saw the false matrix rise and become visible for the first time to a lot of people. And if you guys don't know what the false matrix is and you want to learn about it, check out the video that I link at the end of this one. You can also find it in my lives playlist. What is the inverted AI matrix and how do we ascend out? All right. So we saw that rise to very public power. And now we've seen the dismantling of it. And as Pluto moves into Aquarius, we're going to see the next evolution of that energy, the next phases of this dismantling of the false matrix, of these authoritarian systems and structures in favor of something that is for the people, of the people, by the people, for the people. That is an American slogan, but it very much represents this energy of Aquarius. Aquarius is, when we're looking at the axis of energy here, Aquarius is opposite Leo. And when we're looking at this in terms of leadership, Leo represents royalty. It represents the kings and queens, the monarchy, that type of an energy. And Aquarius represents the democracy. It represents the people coming together, the people deciding for the greater whole, essentially deciding for itself. What do we want? What do we need? What serves us best? As opposed to the few deciding that. And so this is what we're moving into. We're moving into that energy now of true beginning to see and bring into fruition once more what a true democracy actually looks like. And so in the US, and I use this as a reference because this is where I live, so it's where I understand the energy the best, we are getting to see there's a rebirth of that happening. The people are taking back the power. That's what Pluto in Aquarius is. And it is this understanding of the great power. When we move into that energy, power over was the Capricorn energy, and to some extent is Leo energy as well. Power with is the energy of Aquarius. What happens when we really put our heads together? What happens when we come together with these beautiful ideals, these beautiful values, this beautiful vision, and work together to bring that vision into reality, to manifest that into the reality. This is the age of Aquarius. We've been talking about this. I mean, they were singing about it in the 60s and the 70s, right? And that is when we saw the first echoes of this energy. So we're bringing that full circle now. We're really bringing that energy in, and we're able to do something with it. The age of Aquarius, we've talked about a lot, how there's an overlapping of ages. One age begins to fade out while the other age begins to come in. It's not a cut and dry, like the age of Pisces ended on this day and the age of Aquarius ended on this day. We saw some really powerful markers of this initiation of this age astrologically when we had that great conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter at 0 degrees of Aquarius, also back in 2020. We had a lot going on in 2020. That was a major, major shifting point within the timelines and for the collective. And Aquarius energy, Uranian energy, rules timelines, by the way. So we're going to get into that as we continue to explore this a little bit deeper. And we also have these beautiful opening squares from that great conjunction of Saturn and Jupiter happening right now. We have another one on Christmas Eve, if you celebrate that or recognize that holiday. That is December 24th of this year, 12/24/24. So that's going to be really powerful. We have a third opening square happening in June. We had the first opening square happening during, I believe it was the Aquarius full moon. So you guys can check out that video if you want to hear more about that. I believe it was in that video that I talked a bit about this energy. And that when we have Jupiter and Saturn coming together, this is when systems, just like when Pluto enters Aquarius, and honestly, when Uranus enters Gemini, which is about to happen as well, interestingly enough, when we see these huge revolutionary changes and happening. Saturn and Jupiter together. Jupiter represents the ideals, the morals, the values that we want to use to create something. And Saturn represents the structure that we use to create it. So this is a big energy when we're talking about dissolving governments, bringing in new governments, creating new structures and systems for reality. That is a major, major energy. So that started in 2020, and we're at the first check-in point for that energy right around this time as well, which is really exciting, I think, and just adds another layer to all of this. This is where we're getting ready to revolutionize these systems, where we're looking at what doesn't work. We got a really clear view of that at the end of Pluto and Capricorn. Now we're really getting to see even more of that, and we're getting to come together and be like, okay, so what do we do about this? Do we scrap the whole thing? Do we scrap parts of it? Like, what can be salvaged? What really needs to go? What can be reinvented? Aquarius energy, as we just referenced, is ruled by Uranus. It is that 11th house energy. It is that energy that thinks outside the box. Uranus is connected to the Akashic records. It's connected to timelines. It's connected to all of these quantum energies. This is why Aquarians are known as the aliens of the zodiac, because they have an ability to tap into those higher realms, to tap into that greater consciousness and extract the useful information. So we're going to have a greater ability to do this, I do believe. We are going to continue to see our psychic senses developing, people really stepping into their courage to use them, especially with Neptune also transiting into the empowered sign of Aries. This is going to be the age when we start manifesting much more quickly, because Aquarius, Uranus is a quantum energy. It doesn't follow the normal laws of the three-dimensional world, such as what Capricorn follows with that Saturnian energy, really anchoring it into this slow, steady progression. Uranus energy is fast. It's the lightning bolt. It's the tower. It's go, go, go. It's switching through realities at quantum speed. So we're going to see the timeline speeding up. We're going to see manifestations happening much more quickly, particularly if we have done the work to come into alignment. And Pluto's going to show us where we still need to do the work. Because remember, Pluto is the planet of power. It's also the planet of evolution. It rules the shadow. It rules the places within us that we may not want to look, but that we must go in order to find that empowerment, in order to continue to grow and evolve. And in Aquarius, Pluto wants us to evolve at an exponential rate. It's on when Pluto enters Aquarius. So you may already be feeling this. It may feel like anxiety. It may feel like tension. It may feel like electricity running through your limbs, particularly if you have planets within the first 5 degrees of any of the fixed signs. And we're going to get into this more. All the different signs are going to have different types of aspects that Pluto is going to be making to them. But all of us are probably feeling this charge, this surge of energy. Like, okay, something has shifted. I'm not sure what it is, but it feels like something's beginning to click into place. But like I said, we're going to have to go through that underworld. We're going to have to explore our shadow. With Pluto in Aquarius, some of the shadows that we're exploring have to do with individuality and authenticity, have to do with what that really means. And this is something that Aquarius energy, this is one of the sort of blind spots or stumbling blocks for Aquarian energy. Aquarian energy is unique, it is different, and they really embrace that aspect of themselves. But sometimes Aquarian energy can fall into that trap of being terminally unique. And what I mean by this is rebellion simply for rebellion's sake, thinking that being different, that being controversial, that resisting the norms of society automatically makes one authentic. When true authenticity is embracing the truth of who we are. And I have a really funny example that came to mind when I was thinking about this before doing this video. And it was when my partner was making fun of me for liking pumpkin spice. Like I do. It tastes good. You know what I mean? And so him and a friend of ours, they were making fun of me. And I was like, listen, I like what I like. I don't feel the need to say I don't like something just because everyone else appears to like it. You know, like you can make fun of me for it, but it is what it is. It tastes good. If I like it and everybody else likes it, I'm still going to allow myself to like it. If I resonate with it and other people don't, I'm still going to allow myself to resonate and I'm still going to allow myself to express that. That is what authenticity is. It doesn't mean that we have to reject everything. Like that's how I was when I was younger. And I think a lot of people can probably relate to this, is that energy of like, oh, everybody's watching that movie. I'm not going to see it. Oh, everybody's wearing that. I'm not going to do it. You know, it's like because it's the rejection of the status quo to an extreme point where we ultimately get lost in that energy because we don't really know what we truly think, what we truly feel, who we truly are. We just know who we don't want to be. We just know that, well, that person likes that, so I can't. You know what I mean? So that's not true authenticity. True authenticity is embracing what is true for you and expressing that within the world. This is a big energy, throat chakra energy that we're experiencing. Really that energy of speaking our truth and expressing the truth of who we are. And for a lot of us, that process is going to include going through this review process where Pluto brings up to us, is this really you? Or is this the you that you want yourself to be, that you think other people want you to be? Is this the you that's simply a rebellion against another thing that you feel isn't you? Or a class of people, and by class of people, I just mean group of people, that is not you. You know what I mean? Like, is that truly authentic to you? Or is that a mask? Is that a coping mechanism? Is that a trauma response? And so this is what really is going to begin to unravel within each and every single one of us. All of those fears, right? Pluto ruling the shadow rules those fears and the secrets. the secrets that we keep from ourselves, the secrets that we keep from others, about the truth of who we are. And all those fears of judgment, all those fears of not fitting in, not being accepted in society, fears of leadership as well, and our ability to lead and what it means to lead. A lot of these things, it's all going to be wrapped up within this energy. All of this coming to the surface. We're going to see this on an individual level and on a collective level. We're also going to see this energy, and a lot of people have been talking about this with AI, artificial intelligence. What Uranus also represents is advances in technology. Gemini represents the established technology. Uranus represents the cutting edge new technology. And so we're going to see a boom with AI. We've already been seeing this, particularly many say as Pluto began this ingress back and forth between Aquarius and then moving back into Capricorn, sort of beginning to bring AI more and more into the mainstream. And we're going to see this continuing, and we're going to see the shadow side of AI as well. And we're going to have a choice. Do I want to utilize this technology? And is there a way to positively polarize, to use this technology in a positive way? Because there are lots of great things that AI type technologies can do if they are with benevolent intention. They can free us up so that we don't have to waste our time doing menial tasks, so that we can focus on our zone of genius, meaning where it is that we excel, where it is that we light up, what it is that we love to do, where we are creative, as opposed to all of the tedious day-to-day tasks of life. So this is where AI can really help us to shine. And I was watching something else. It was Lady Duncheva, and she was talking with somebody about this energy of AI and about the ways that some people you're already seeing some of the shadow side of it, where people are not recognizing it as something that can free them up to be more creative, and instead they're using it to try to create for them. I've heard a lot of people talking about this, saying like, oh, you can make an AI video that'll do all that for you. You can just put in some keywords, put in what you want to say, and it'll make the whole video, and it's like, so people are doing that and giving away their creativity. That's one of the areas where AI becomes dangerous. When we allow it to take from us or to do for us the one thing that it can't really do to the level that we can do it. Like, yes, AI can generate anything. It can create something. But there's another aspect of it. There's that soul aspect that can only be generated when you have a conscious creational being of love light making that creation. There is this energy with AI, like there's a lot of AI that is linked to very dark things. This artificial intelligence, this AI virus, so to speak, that infects the minds, that has essentially tried to pull us into this transhuman kind of state where we are kind of hybrids of technology and human. And this is happening sometimes even at a DNA level. And we're still not quite at the point yet where I can speak freely about some of the things that I'm sort of passingly referencing in here on YouTube. I do plan at some point to do a video on Rumble, if you guys don't follow me there yet, talking about this energy. But for now, we'll just say there's a darkness to it. There's a shadow side to it. So we're going to see both. And some people have actually said that one of the possible timelines, this is what we'll call it, one of the possible timelines for humanity is that we will allow an almost complete takeover of AI. That will become the new governing power, if you will, where it was sort of these 1% of people, this shadow government, this cabal, and this one energy. Now it'll be through this AI energy as we liberate ourselves from them. Some people do foresee that, and then a rising up from that and sort of breaking free from that. And that would be a natural cycle of Pluto in Aquarius. However, I do believe that because we are on this highest timeline right now, we have a chance to avoid that. We have a chance to recognize that before it gets out of hand and positively polarize that technology and make it work for us instead of it essentially making us work for it, which is one of the sort of options of that energy. So we're going to continue to see how this progresses, how this develops as we move through Pluto and Aquarius. Because remember, like we said, Aquarius and Uranian energy rules timelines. So we have an infinite amount of timelines to choose from. What are we going to choose? So that's another aspect of this Pluto and Aquarius energy, as well as this aspect of moving more towards a united humanitarian vision for all people, a liberated, democratic type of a vision. And so we're going to see the pits and falls of all of that as well, the shadows of all of that. We've seen different ways how democracy works, how it doesn't work. How do we get it to work better? How do we give everybody a voice, but at the same time actually ever come to a consensus? There's going to be a whole lot of that and a whole lot of varieties of that energy that come up as we are moving through this energy as well. Now, something else before we get into the specific experiences per sign that I wanted to touch on was this energy of Mars and Pluto, because Mars and Pluto have been doing a dance. They have had a really interesting cycle, meaning from the time they come into conjunction to when they come into opposition or conjunction again. That is one complete cycle of their energy. And Pluto entered Aquarius during an opposition, during the halfway point of that cycle. So I'm going to read out the dates for that cycle for you so that you guys can get a feel for how this energy has been progressing. And I'm going to read out the dates for the Pluto transits into Aquarius. We'll do Pluto into Aquarius first and sort of what that has looked like, just so people can get a feel for these energies, maybe get a feel for what was going on in your life during these times when we had these transitions of Pluto moving back and forth. It was March 23rd, 2023, 32323, which is a really interesting date, right? For all my numbers people, as we're looking with the recoding of the matrix and all of this. That originally birthing, the 3 is a birthing number, right? We have the 0 represents spirit. And the ether is the totality of existence. We have the 1, which equals the individual leadership. We have 2, which equals the duality, which equals the pair, the partner, divine masculine, divine feminine coming together. And then they birth that 3rd energy. So that's the energy of the Trinity, the father, the mother, the child, right? As we're creating this new world. And now as we're in this 4 energy with 2024, yes, it has been an 8 year, but we have that 4 energy present as well. And that's the energy of stabilizing. That's us energy as we begin this process of building a foundation within this new earth energy. Just as a little aside there. So 32323, we had Pluto first enter Aquarius. And then in June 2023, Pluto retrograded back into Capricorn. So the retrograde started before June, but I'm just giving you the points when it hit Capricorn and when it hit Aquarius. So in June 2023, Pluto went back into the final degrees of Capricorn. On January 21st, 2024, Pluto re-entered the sign of Aquarius. And then on September 2nd of this year, Pluto retrograded back into Capricorn. And then, of course, we know on the 19th, we had Pluto re-enter Aquarius, and Pluto is no longer going to retrograde back into Capricorn. However, on the other end of the spectrum, we're going to have Pluto on March 9th of 2043. I know it's crazy to think of these dates that are really only 20 years away, 19 years away at this point. March 9th, 2043, Pluto will hit that 0 degrees point of Pisces, move into Pisces, kind of dip its toe into the waters of Pisces. And then on September 1st of 2043, move retrograde back into Aquarius. On November 19th, interesting, November 19th again, 2044, Pluto will station firmly within the sign of Pisces and begin that transit in earnest. So those are the dates for the Pluto, what we've been experiencing as Pluto has been completing this Capricorn cycle. Remember, it began back in 2008. And of course, there was a process similar to this when Capricorn was in there with Pluto and Sagittarius, but I didn't get into all of those dates. We're looking forward here more than we're looking that far backwards in this particular video. So we had this interesting dance going on with Mars and Pluto. So when Pluto first entered the sign of Aquarius, it was in a different Mars-Pluto cycle. And during that cycle, it was actually at its quincunx point. So this was at 150 degree angle. This is like a really irritating angle. It's not as intense as a square or an opposition, but there is a tension there. It's kind of like that itch in the back of your brain that you can't really scratch. It's like that thing that keeps kind of poking you on the shoulder, but it's very subtle. You don't really notice it, but it irritates you. You know that there's something there. You know that there's something uncomfortable, but it's hard to really put your finger on what it is. So that was that energy that we were feeling between Mars and Pluto when Pluto first entered into the sign of Aquarius. And at that point, I do believe, yes, Mars was at 29 degrees of Gemini. So Mars, really in his energy, doing his thing. In the sign of Gemini, Mars is go, go, go. Mars is wanting to learn. He's wanting to talk. He's wanting to communicate and expand. He wants a lot of variety. He wants spontaneity. But when Pluto comes in, it brings this kind of heavier energy in a sense. Even with Pluto at that 0 degree of Aquarius, that birthing point within the Aquarian energy, because it's Pluto. All right, no matter what, Pluto is solid, Pluto lands, right? Pluto is power, it is strength, it is evolutionary potential. And it is the potential that we're going to realize one way or another, because this is what our souls signed up for. This is the big it when it comes to all of the different themes and energies that we can look at and the ways that we're wanting to evolve. Pluto is the collective energy of evolution and where that evolution is going. So Mars might have noticed a little bit of irritability at this time, like, because I want everyone to understand this relationship between Mars and Pluto the way that I see it. Pluto represents our human will, our ego will, so to speak, our drives, our desires, what our ego wants, what our human wants. Because the human essentially is the ego, right? The greater spiritual being that we are is not the human. That's the role that we're playing. The ego is the density that we take on in order to stay in this dimension. All right, so it's the human personality, it's the human will. So that's what Mars represents. All those human drives, desires, wants, and needs, ambitions. Pluto, on the other hand, represents our higher soul's will. What our higher self wants, where our soul is looking to grow and evolve, and how it is looking to do that. This is also a collective energy. So within the collective, how our individual soul wants to contribute to the evolution of the collective. So when we look at Pluto transits in general, we're looking at how the collective is evolving. When we look at Pluto in our natal chart, we're looking at how we individually are evolving our energy within this lifetime in order to serve the greater evolution and our own individual evolution. Because it's like microcosm, macrocosm, right? We are a part of the whole. We are an individual spark of that greater collective whole. We're not going to go too deeply into all of that, but we're just going to say essentially when Mars and Pluto are having connections, it's sort of a battle of wills. It's the lower human will versus the higher soul's will. And of course, the higher self, the soul, is going to win out every time. It is the heavyweight in this conversation. And Mars really doesn't like that because Mars is used to being the heavyweight. So when Pluto comes in and outranks him, Mars can be a bit frustrated. Mars can be a bit irritated. So we were feeling that kind of irritation, that power struggle that ensues throughout each of these cycles as our higher will harmonizes with our lower will and sort of brings it into its orbit. So it's like our soul calling our human into its orbit and saying, okay, yes, I understand that's what you want. But this is what we want. And let me show you why. And let me help you understand what within you is afraid or resistant to connect with me. Let me show you your fears. Let me show you what holds you back. Let me tell you some secrets, right? And ultimately, we're a sucker for a good secret. Right? Our human wants to know, it wants to learn, it wants to be in the know, right? It wants to be in the loop. So that is a seduction in and of itself where we're like, oh, okay, let me know. I want to find out. Right? It's like that part of us that is drawn to our shadow, even when we're simultaneously repulsed by it. It's that part of us that likes to be scared, right? This is why people go to scary movies. We go to haunted houses. It gets that adrenaline pumping. And so there's an aspect of that energy that is seductive, even though we resist initially. Eventually, we come closer. We listen to what Pluto has to say. And if we don't listen, Pluto makes it increasingly uncomfortable until we do. That is just sort of the energy of it. Pluto initiates us through taking us on a tour of our deepest fears in order to allow us to overcome them. Our deepest revulsions, our deepest taboos, our deepest shame. It's a really intense process. Can you tell that Pluto is my favorite planet? I have a natal Pluto in Scorpio. It's the energy I live for, even though while I'm in it a lot of times, like I don't understand why. You always remember when you get to the other side. And that's sort of the energy of this. So we had Pluto when it first entered Aquarius in this quincunx with Mars and Gemini. And then they moved into the opposition in May. So March, Pluto enters Aquarius 2023 in that quincunx to Mars. May, they have their opposition of the cycle right before this one. And during that opposition, we had Mars within the sign of Leo and Pluto within the sign of Aquarius. So the same opposition that we had going on, or we have going on even as I'm recording this video, as Pluto re-entered the sign of Aquarius for the final time. Now, this current cycle of Mars and Pluto that we are in began with Mars and Pluto conjunct within the sign of Aquarius at 0 degrees of Aquarius on February 14th, 13th, 14th of 2024. So that was the completion of the previous cycle, as well as the birthing or the creation of the cycle that we are currently experiencing. The end and the beginning, the alpha and the omega. We see this energy of how destruction begets creation, even when we're looking at these different planetary cycles. So we had that original cycle begin on February 13th, 14th of 2024 at that 0 degree birthing point of Aquarius. The same point some have mentioned where we had that conjunction that we were talking about of Saturn and Jupiter as well. A lot of powerful things happening at this 0 degree point of Aquarius. Yet another indicator of the birthing of the age of Aquarius. Now we have a couple other dates here. And yes, I am reading these because it's a lot of information to memorize. Okay, so we had a square, the first opening square of this Pluto-Mars cycle on June 11th, 2024, with Mars at 1 degree of Taurus and Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius. And then the exactness of the opposition that we are experiencing right now actually occurred with Mars at 29 degrees of Cancer and Pluto at 29 degrees of Capricorn. So closing out that Capricorn cycle with that opposition to Mars here as one of these final energies that Pluto and Capricorn is experiencing. Now we have Mars, who has wandered a few degrees into Leo, and Pluto, who is now moved into Aquarius at that 0 degree point. So they're still in opposition, but it is an opposition that is beginning to break up. I still find it significant that we had this repeating energy of this opposition with Mars and Leo and Pluto in Aquarius here. Mars, the human ego, the human will, in the sign of Leo, which represents the monarchy, which represents the individual, the ruler, the sovereign. And then Pluto in Aquarius, which represents the democracy, which represents the collective leadership, which represents us coming together to unify and create something that really speaks of the people, right? Like the phrase that I use at the beginning of this video, of the people, by the people, for the people. So this is a big, interesting energy, and we can see that tug of war between the individualized self and the greater collective self, the individualized will and the higher will, the soul's will, and the collective evolution. Now we're going to have another square between Mars and Pluto during this cycle, and that square is going to happen on September 24th of 2025, with Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius and Mars at 1 degree of Scorpio. So moving into the other energy. And anybody who has fixed signs at these beginning degrees of Aquarius, or any of these, the beginning degrees of any of these fixed signs, you're going to be feeling this. So pay attention to these dates, because it's going to be conjunct your planet, your angle, whatever significant energy you have within those initial degrees of those fixed signs. You're going to be feeling it the most, whether it's a square, an opposition, or a conjunction as we move through this process here. And I will also point out that 2 degrees of Scorpio is where we have the Shapley attractor. And we've talked about the Shapley attractor a bit on here. We had that new moon in Scorpio conjunct the Shapley attractor. And that was a looser conjunction that happened. The new moon happened at 9 degrees of Scorpio. This is at 1 degree. So 1 degree away from the Shapley. The Shapley attractor is the point. It's found within the Shapley star cluster. And it is the point around which all objects, all galaxies within our known universe rotate. This is like the big kahuna here, the Shapley attractor. This is what some people relate as the God source energy or nexus point. So this is huge, and it is a point also that speaks of revealing secrets, revealing true intentions, where motives are revealed, where things come to light, where we must operate in integrity, because those with connections to this point wield a massive amount of power. So it's really interesting that we have Mars conjunct the Shapley attractor. I think that's going to be a really interesting square when we hit that point within this particular journey of Mars and Pluto. So we'll explore that more as we come closer to it, but be on the lookout for that energy. That is September of 2025, 92425. And then we're going to have a conjunction, the cycle completing and the birthing of a brand new cycle of Pluto and Mars on January 27th, 2026 at 3 degrees of Aquarius. So just some aspects in the super crazy, intense energies that we have going on from 2025 to 2027. This is a roller coaster. Buckle up. It is, I mean, the astrology is just massive. All right, so this is just a little taste and a little example of what we have to come. And like we said, this is a showdown between the ego, the human will, and the higher will. And as we said, the higher will always wins out. But this is a showdown in fixed signs, in signs that tend to be more stubborn, that tend to be less yielding, more resistant to change. A lot of people think of Scorpio energy as the energy of change and transformation, and it is. But Scorpio energy changes and transforms through crisis. Scorpio energy resists. Scorpio energy is deeply emotional, but it doesn't necessarily always want to feel or reveal that emotion. It tends to be repressive sometimes. It tends to resist change until that crisis kicks it into gear. And then there's a huge transformation. But that resistance process can go on for years. This is the 8th house energy as well. And this is the Plutonic energy, which is that slow build. And so there is within the Taurus energy, when we have that square with Taurus, Mars in Taurus, when we have that square with Mars in Scorpio, and of course the opposition that we're experiencing right now with Mars and Leo, which is also fixed energy, which can also be very stubborn. There's a lot there. There's a lot that Pluto is slowly and steadily shaking loose. And there's a journey here, though, as we begin to find that when we release resistance to our higher self, to our own evolution out of fear of change, out of fear of the unknown, this is an ego death energy. This is where the version of us that we know is dying, the version of the person that we thought we were, what we thought we wanted, what we thought we needed, what we thought motivated us, and going deeper within that, stripping away some of those layers of falsehood so that we can step more deeply into, you guessed it, authenticity. Let's get into, for each of the signs, the energies here of what we're going to be experiencing. So, of course, as we said, the fixed signs, you guys, or we, I guess I could say, I got lots of planets in Taurus. I'm a Taurus sun. I got that Pluto in Scorpio. Those of you who also have Pluto in Scorpio, by the way, are going to be experiencing your Pluto square. This is a huge transit. Pluto takes 248 years to orbit the entire zodiac. Very few of us will ever even see a Pluto opposition. Some of us will. But a Pluto square is sometimes, in many lifetimes, the only major transit, or one of only 2 major transits of Pluto, as far as Pluto on Pluto action, I guess you could say. So this is big. This is honestly, in my opinion, as big as a Saturn return. Saturn return, most people only get 2, some people get 3. Saturn it's around age 29 to 30. 28 to 30 that we have that Saturn return. And then again, when we're around 60 or so. All right. And then if we live to be around 120, we'll get another one. But this is right up there with that energy, the Pluto square. Wherever your Pluto is within Scorpio is going to determine like when you experience this, because it's going to be when Pluto gets to that degree point. And within a few degrees of that is when you're really going to be feeling it. All right. So some of us experiencing that Pluto square, this is the biggest transformation that we will go through in our lifetime, in my opinion. When Pluto squares our natal Pluto, really puts the pressure on and really asks us to look at, what did my soul come here to do? How did my soul come here to grow and evolve? And how did my soul come here to contribute to the collective evolution? Where am I at in that process? What fears need to be addressed? What within the shadow needs to be exposed so that I can rise to that occasion? And those of us with natal Pluto in Scorpio, I mean, Pluto is in its natal sign. Pluto is in the sign of the energy that it rules. So Pluto and Scorpio generation are super intense anyway. This is the generation of taboos. This is the generation of exploring the shadow. This is the generation of the past life priestesses and high priests and priestesses and the occult workers, the strangest of the strange in some ways. This is the generation who walks between light and dark in a really powerful way. So it's going to be intense. But like I said, if you have any other planets within these first few degrees of Scorpio, you're going to be receiving that square as well. And if you have any planets in the first few degrees of Taurus, you're also going to be receiving that squaring action from Pluto at the beginning of its transit. And if you have planets later in Scorpio or later in Taurus, you're going to be experiencing that square later into the Pluto transits. And after I get through describing the energies of the different zodiac signs with this Pluto transit, I'm going to go through the different years that Pluto is going to be like, when Pluto's in the first 5 degrees, when Pluto's in the 5 to 10 degree range, and so on and so forth. So you can look up your planets and you can see when you're going to be feeling this energy most intensely. Because I can put some fears aside perhaps to say, because there's been a lot of hype about this, especially for the fixed signs, because they're the ones getting the squares and the oppositions and the conjunctions. Those are the most intense aspects, right? Everybody else, they're getting trines, they're getting sextiles, they're getting quincunxes, which is that scratch in the back of the brain, but like not in your face the way it is for the fixed signs. So there has been a lot of hype about that, but it's not going to be the entire 20 years that you're experiencing this intensity. It's going to be like a gentle building when you come up to when Pluto's approaching your personal planets or angles in your chart. And then the intensity when it's right on that angle or right, that aspect is exact, that square opposition. And then the energy is going to be sort of filtering off. So it's going to be really like a couple years leading up that you really feel the intensity. Like I said, some people within those first 5 degrees, even now you might be feeling it, but it'll get more intense as the years progress to that point. And then it'll be like a couple of years as the energy is dwindling and you're integrating. And then, of course, you'll continue integrating throughout the whole transit. But it's not going to be super intense the whole time unless you have personal planets or major points or Pluto itself all spread out throughout Taurus or Scorpio or Leo or Aquarius, right? If you have a lot of planets in any of those fixed signs and Pluto's going to be hitting multiple planets, and especially if they're spaced further apart, you may be feeling the intensity of this throughout the transit. So anyone with a stellium in Scorpio, I love you. Please, if you need any assistance, reach out. But for people who just have a planet or two or an angle, there's going to be a period of time where that's most intense for you. So Taurus, Scorpio, you're going to be experiencing the square. So this is that tension of energy. This is where you're not seeing eye to eye. Pluto's really forcing you in a transformation that you may be digging your heels in and not wanting to make. And so the best guidance is just to surrender into that, to allow what's coming up to come up, to allow that ego death, because these are all ego deaths when Pluto's involved. It's not just with Pluto and Mars specifically. To allow for that process to occur, to allow for that transformation to happen, just to be willing. Like the analogy that I'm being given right now is when you're going swimming, right? There are two types of people. There are the people like me who like to slowly wade into the water, feel it every inch of the way as the water's coming up. Oh, I'm cold. Oh no, I'm cold again. You know what I mean? To acclimate. And there's the people who just dive right in. If you dive right in, this energy is going to be a lot easier. You can do it the easy way or the hard way, but either way, it's getting done, all right? So Leos, people with heavy placements within the sign of Leo or angles in their charts, are going to be experiencing the oppositional energy with Pluto. So this is similar to a square. It's a little bit less intense. The planets are a little more likely to come to a consensus, to get along. There's that tension, that tug of war. But remember, when we're in an opposition, these are two signs that are connected. Leo and Aquarius are two sides of the same coin. They have differences, but they also have a lot of similarities. When we're looking at the squares, they don't have a whole lot in common. That's what makes it so tenuous. That's what makes it so tense, right? Aquarius and Taurus, Aquarius and Scorpio, there's not as much common ground. With Leo and Aquarius, they can find common ground. And so it is a challenging aspect, but it's a bit easier to integrate. And once again, the guidance is the same. Dive right in and it's going to be a lot easier. Continue to surrender. This is going to be a process of surrendering over and over and over again. Try to resist the urge to bury your head in the sand. Sometimes when we have Pluto transits, another part of how Pluto initiates us is through our addictions, through our obsessions, through our compulsions. And so you may find yourself getting pulled back into some of those tendencies. So you want to recognize when that is happening and look at the meat of it. Why is this happening? What is the need that is being met? What is the fear that is perpetuating this cycle? What am I afraid of that I'm trying to avoid? And how can I face that head on? This is very much an energy of walking through your fears. Moving on from there, we're going to go into Aries and Sagittarius. So if you have major placements in Aries and Sag, you are going to be experiencing a sextile energy to Pluto in Aquarius. So this is a stimulating energy. There's always somewhat of a heaviness where Pluto, right? Because Pluto's the shadow, Pluto's intensity, Pluto is power. And power struggles. So there's always intensity. It's not like any Pluto transit is like super rosy, right? Everything's unicorns and rainbows, but it is a more pleasant aspect. This is where you're feeling energized by Pluto. You're feeling that intellectual. Sextile is a very cerebral energy. It's a very mercurial, in a sense, kind of an energy. So your mind is being stimulated. You want to make sure that you are taking care of your being, especially your mental body. So being aware, not allowing your thoughts to run amok, noticing if these obsessive thought patterns are creeping in, noticing where this energy is running away with itself and kind of bringing it back. Going into meditation. What can you do? The sextile is very creative energy. What can I create with this? How is it that I can alchemize this energy through some type of creative process, through some type of expression? That's a really great way to work with the sextile energy, but it's very supportive. It's supporting whatever planets or angles you have here and really bringing out a deeper side to them and really transforming in a very empowered way. Now, if you have major placements in Gemini or Libra or angles in your chart, you're going to be experiencing a trine-like energy to Pluto. So when Pluto comes into contact with your personal planets, your house angles, it's going to be a very harmonizing energy. This is the most pleasant, the most easygoing. It's kind of where you find your stride all of a sudden, where you begin to feel more inventive, more empowered, where you're just naturally wanting to grow and evolve. And you're looking into your shadow, but it doesn't necessarily feel as heavy. There's a way to lighten it up. There's like, it's an ease. It feels like the energy, and this can be similar with the sextile, but it feels more pronounced with the trine, where it's like, you notice a behavior and you're like, where does that come from? Why am I doing that again? And the answer just kind of like drops into your mind and you're like, oh, it's because of this childhood thing, or it's this belief system that, no, I don't really identify with that anymore. I'm ready to let that go. So it's like a really beautiful energy for all of my Geminis and Libras in that sense, where it's really helping you sort through things and transform in a way that feels, like we said, Pluto, there's a heaviness to it, but a lot lighter. So that's a really beautiful energy for my Geminis and my Libras. So my Cancers and my Virgos are going to be experiencing what's called a quincunx here. And my Pisces and Capricorns are going to be experiencing what's known as an inconjunct. And these are very similar energies. This is a 30-degree angle or a 150-degree angle. So they're minor aspects. These are those aspects that we're talking about that feel kind of like that scratching at the back of your brain, where you can't really pinpoint or understand what the issue is. You just know vaguely that there's an issue, and there's like a vague sense of discomfort or irritation going on. Now with Pisces and Capricorn, these are the signs on either side of Aquarius. And then we have Cancer and Virgo on the opposite, but not quite in an opposition as Leo is. So just kind of kicked off to the sides here. And these are what, like we said, produce these similar types of energies. So for you guys especially, it's going to be helpful to know what degrees of these signs you have planets or angles in, so that you understand when Pluto is approaching them, and that can help give you some framework to understand where this irritation is coming from, where this discomfort is coming from, and what is being asked of you as a result of that. And what's being asked of you is going to depend on the planet or angle of the house that's being aspected here, and also what that house represents. So the house is going to tell you the area of life where you're being asked to change and evolve. And the planet is going to tell you how. It's going to tell you what aspect of your psyche or energy is asking for that upgrade, is going through that initiation. If it's Venus, this is going to be your desire nature. This is going to be your creativity, your feminine energy. If it is Mars, this is going to be your masculine energy, your will, your drive. If it's Mercury, this is going to be your mental energy, your communication, your perception and processing, and so on and so forth. And say, for example, you have the fourth house being aspected. This is going to be taking place within your home, within that area of life, that domain. It's also a deep shift within the bedrock of who you are. As the fourth house, I like to refer to as the bedrock of the soul. This could be lineage. This could be things within your family of origin coming up. This could be your own safe space, your own home. So that's an example of this. If it's your 11th house, the Aquarius house, this is going to be friends. This is going to be associations. This is going to be your hopes, dreams, ideals that are looking for an upgrade here. This is going to be where you're looking at who you spend your time around, how you network, how you connect with people, and whether that could use an upgrade, whether your social circle could use an upgrade. This is where shadow aspects might be showing up through other people. The 7th house is another area where this may be happening, as well as the 4th house, more specifically with your family. But it's like your friends and the people that you spend your time around, the people that are involved in the organizations that you're involved with, the groups that you're involved with. They might be bringing out shadow elements in you in order to be addressed. And so that's going to help you understand and give you a framework. And then that Pluto in Aquarius is going to remind you, all right, this is an opportunity to become more authentic to me. This is an opportunity to use my voice. This is an opportunity to change something that needs an overhaul, and to really address what is coming up with me within my own shadows that is making me afraid of this change, so that I can move through that energy and I can allow this shift to occur. And then, of course, I almost forgot to say, if you have planets, we talked about the oppositional aspect with Leo. If you have planets in Aquarius, you're going to be feeling this throughout the duration. It's going to be varying levels of intensity as you have Pluto coming into contact with your planets If wherever your Aquarius house is as well, you're going to be feeling this the most strongly. So that's the area of your life where this theme is going to be present. Even people who don't have planets or angles in Aquarius, well, most people have at least one house angle. You have a house. And even if you have an intercepted house, meaning you have Aquarius energy somewhere where it doesn't rule one of your houses, but it's kind of swallowed up or sandwiched inside of a house, which happens depending on house systems. We don't need to get into that too much here. Just know that wherever that Aquarius energy is, that's where you're feeling the intensity of this. You're going to feel it in waves. It's going to come through in waves. The conjunctions, when you do have planets or angles there that Pluto is coming into contact with, it's intense, but a conjunction is a really pleasant aspect in the sense that the planets are getting along. Their energies are unifying. They're merging. They have a similar mission. They're ready to go. So it's actually, honestly, Aquarius is going to be a bit rattling just because Pluto's in that sign, particularly if you have your sun or your rising in Aquarius, maybe your moon, any of your personal planets. But it's going to be, honestly, a beautiful, liberating energy for you, particularly when Pluto comes into conjunction. You're going to have to face yourself. You're going to have to face your shadows, but you're going to have the ability to do it. And it's going to be a really beautiful, it's going to have less resistance and less tension and frustration than it would have with a square or an opposition. So there's more of an ability to blend. There's less of that resistance, perhaps. And of course, that varies by individual to individual and how much you're willing to release and let go. But it's going to be, it's a huge transformative time for you as well. So the biggest transformations are happening, yes, for my fixed signs. But any of these aspects, regardless of how tense or not, have the ability to take us deeper into ourselves and to really springboard us in our evolutionary process. So here are the years for everybody. Right now, as you're watching this video, if you're finding this around the time I'm releasing this, I'm recording this the day after Pluto moved into Aquarius on the 20th. This will probably come out in the next few days after I record it. From now through March of 2027, Pluto is going to be moving back and forth throughout the first 5 degrees of Aquarius. And what I mean by this is retrogrades and then direct motion. Pluto traces the same points for a long time. This is another reason that Pluto's energy is so intense, because we feel it in the same area for years, really, within those few degrees. So it's not like another planet where it kind of breezes by, especially the personal planets. Like Pluto sits on that point in the chart and really, really delves deep into it, leaves no stone unturned. All right, so through March 2027, those first 5 degrees of Aquarius. From 2027 to 2030, we're going to have Pluto moving back and forth between 5 and 10 degrees of Aquarius. And then from 2030 to 2033, from 10 to 15 degrees of Aquarius. Then from 2033 to 2037, from 16 to 20 degrees. From 2037 to 2040, 20 to 25 degrees. And then 2040 to 2044, Pluto's going to be that 25 to 29 degree point. And as we said, in 2023, we're going to have Pluto dip back into Pisces, or ingress into Pisces, and then retrograde back. So there's going to be that back and forth between 2023 and 2024, where Pluto's also pulling in those Piscean energies. So my Pisces, as we move toward 2044, you're going to begin feeling this energy. It's kind of like this, you might feel it like this building tension as Pluto enters those final degrees, particularly where that itch gets a little stronger and a little stronger. So just be aware of that. Just start preparing yourself. The more we can, we don't want to overdo it when it comes to our shadow work, right? We don't want to get so lost in it that we're just in a constant process of uncovering and digging up our wounds and our traumas. Like, we want to take breaks within that energy. So pay attention to when it feels like you're meant to go deeper and when it feels like you're meant to pull back and rest and take a break. That's the integration process. There are going to be different pulses of this energy throughout this Pluto transit. And you can really notice when you see, like, as Pluto's approaching a planet or a point in your chart, or an aspect to a planet or point in your chart, that's when the work begins. The breakthroughs happen around the time of the exactness of the opposition, the square, the trine, the sextile, the whatever, the conjunction. And then that energy breaks up a little bit, and like you're perhaps continuing to play with the energy, but you're more in an integrating phase and then in a rest phase until Pluto approaches something else. So allow for those ebbs and flows in this energy, but start getting willing to look at what wants to be looked at now, and start this process, however that looks for you, of preparing to surrender what no longer fits and becoming less identified with who you believe yourself to be right now. It's that attachment to the ego, that attachment to, I am me, I'm defined by this and this and this happened to me, and this is my story, and this is who I am, and this is my energy, and this is that, and this is what I like, and this is what I don't like. It's good to know those things, but it's also good to allow that to be fluid, because that changes and evolves as we change and evolve. There's this shift away from this identity-focused version of ourselves, version of other people, version of the world. You know, in the United States in politics, we call it like identity politics, right? It's like, I am a white woman. I am a white cis woman, this, that, whatever, you know, all the different ways that we identify ourselves. You know, I'm marginalized. I'm not marginalized. I'm this percentage marginalized. I'm that. I'm in this, I'm involved with that. It's like stopping defining ourselves in all those strict terms. I'm a starseed, I'm a light worker, I'm a Pleiadian, I'm a this, and I'm saying that's like more the light worker version of it, right? And I'm not saying don't do that. I'm just saying be open to more. Be open to understanding that, yes, those may be aspects of your current experience of reality, but they don't define who you are. You are so much more than the boxes that you place yourself in, the labels that you place upon yourself. And yes, labels can help us to understand ourselves, but when we cling to them and adhere to them and dismiss everything that doesn't fit with that, or say, because I am this label, this means I am this, this, and that, we really do ourselves a disservice, and that's when the label becomes like a ball and chain tied around our ankle. So we're moving out of that energy into a more fluid understanding of ourselves, our world, our reality, and our place within it. All right, I love you so much. I honor you. I respect you. Thank you for joining me for this video. As I said, go ahead and subscribe if you have not done so yet. Please go ahead and like this video. Share it if you know somebody who would enjoy this content. And if you want any of the different services that I offer, I do one-on-one coaching. I do all types of individual readings, energy healings, entity removals. All of that is in the description box below. Much love.